Looks like we got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Welcome to Coordinated Fire, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast where things allegedly smell faintly of maple syrup, but no one has been able to confirm or deny the claim. Hey guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. And I think it does smell a little bit like maple syrup.
I don't notice it.
There's a little bit of a tinge at every event we do a critical hit. I just notice it more and more every single time.
My sense of smell is notoriously bad, so.
Yeah.
But all right, we've got the usual crew here. So me, Sean, and Titus are all here, but we also have a special guest this week. So Rudy, I will throw it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hey guys, most of you know me as Rudy. Some of you know me as Rudyyy with 3 Ys specifically. I'm just happy to be here. Been listening since you guys started it up, and thanks for having me on.
Well,
Awesome.
You are here, one, because you are a great contributor to our community and very active in the Discord, and it is awesome to be able to have you on. But you also just went on a pretty great run at the Nova Open, which we are very excited to talk about. So first of all, congrats on making the top 8.
Thank you. It was a very, very long day.
I bet it was, and I am excited to go through that long day. Before we dive in too far, as we do with any guests we bring on, I just want to go over a little bit about kind of your gaming history a bit and what kind of brought you to Shatterpoint. So, I guess first question, how did you get into Shatterpoint? Did you come from a miniatures background?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. Shatterpoint was supposed to be originally a secondary hobby for me. I came from a long history of competitive TCGs, played, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and then eventually Lorcana when it came out. So it was never really a miniature background until Shatterpoint.
Okay. I like that a lot because honestly, this is one of the discussions that we have as a group quite a lot because Sean comes from more of that TCG background where I am years of miniature games, played 40K for a decade at least, and bounced around a lot of miniature games. Titus, I think you probably more of a mix. You played Legion a bit.
Yeah, it was a bit of both. Like I played Star Wars War Games, but that was around the COVID time period. Before that, it was mostly just TCGs for me as well. War Games were always kind of there.
Yeah,
I've never played Magic, but I actually did a long ago. Did a good run with Yu-Gi-Oh, but that's a different lifetime.
Yeah, your stories, Rudy, sounds very similar to mine. MCP was my first miniatures game, like skirmish game, I guess. I had played Warhammer for a little bit while before that, but I came from Magic. I was a competitive standard player way back in the day too, so that's really interesting.
This being your first miniatures game, how impactful was Star Wars to that decision?
100% the only reason I chose Shatterpoint over another one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Love that. So who's your favorite Star Wars character?
I mean, I know it's cliche, but it's always been Obi-Wan. I grew up without cable TV, without internet for a very long time, so I watched the originals over and over and over and over again.
It is not my top one, but it's real. He's real close. That's awesome. So I guess similar and maybe doesn't quite line up the same, but who's your favorite character in Shatterpoint?
It's got to be Vader 3.
Ooh,
nice.
Right.
I love that answer.
Yeah, I will admit that Fixer gave him a run for his money whenever Fixer was spoiled, but after testing, Vader 3 just wins for me every time.
Hit a couple quick things for us on Vader 3. What's put him in that spot for you?
Well, first and foremost, I think he's one of the only secondaries that actually feels like a 5. I mean, Shakti, of course, and K2, they both feel like 5s, but specifically in Empire, it feels really good to have a model that's a secondary that does more than DTE, which is weird to say. But that and the fact that he kind of helps fix the Force economy were two of the big things that stood out to me when he was first spoiled. And his model is just awesome.
Yeah,
that model is incredible.
His cave, he's the biggest Vader out of all 3 of them, which is interesting. And I find too as well, and I don't know if you noticed it too, Rudy, but he's a bit of a blender for a secondary. He can hit real hard.
He can, yeah. Though I will say, multiple times lately, it's mattered that he only does 8 damage, but we'll get into that later.
I think in a lot of ways, he is very much a primary sitting in a secondary slot, though.
Yeah. It's really cool. I know a lot of people don't like referring to things as baby versions of another character, but he is kind of a baby Maul in a way. sort of.
Makes sense why I don't like him.
Yeah, that's why Kyle's never put him on the table, ever.
It's true. He's still sitting in that very pretty, very expensive box. Awesome. Well, Rudy, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm very excited to talk about Nova. What an incredible event overall. I know from my side, you go through the ebbs and flows of excitement. And I know that the moment Nova started kicking off in a way that I don't feel with every event that I'm not attending, I have been hyped all weekend. It just following the results, seeing the list that people are playing was just absolutely incredible.
This one felt special outside of Worlds. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Very, very competitive crowd, some surprises in lists. So I'm excited to go over that. So let's jump into games played. I guess we'll go over ours quick before Rudy will pass it over to you to jump through your games at Nova. Sean, what have you played lately?
Sure. Yeah. So this week I got our weekly local game. Thursday at Dueling Grounds, I played Ryan. This was me just playing a fun list. I decided to play some Mandalorians. I played Armor with Ahsoka Jedi No More with both core box secondaries, Bo-Katan and Gar Saxon with Clan Kryze and the Coverts. We played this on Sabotage. Ryan played the Rift box as is, and then also the Mandalorian, Dengar, and Bounty Hunters. This game brought me back to a list that I've played before. I think Ahsoka Jedi No More is quite good with Mandalorians. I think she brings a little bit of a different flavor, a little bit different abilities to that with a nice, obviously the revenge attack now. With the way that they've changed Ahsoka, I think she feels really great paired with Mandos, and really showed me the power of Riff and what that box can do. And holy jumpins, the amount of times that Ryan said, okay, well, this is base attack, and then you get dice for this, and 2 dice for this, and a dice for this, and da-da-da. And like the amount of dice that he would hold in his hands sometimes on some of these attacks with like Riff and from these aquatic attacks, I was just like, and I think this is my first or second time playing against Riff. I was like, really? That many? You go, yeah, this and this and this and this and this. I'm like, oh, jumpins. So yeah, I definitely think even post Nova 2, there's something to Riff, maybe more on the scoundrel side, I think, coming out of the results of the tournament, but really great game that brought me back to a list that I've enjoyed.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Riff is surprising a lot of people. Certainly more relevant than I think a lot of people thought off the hop. And as people start to figure this out, is he going to change the meta? Maybe not, but not every really should. But overall, I think it is just an incredible box.
You're going to have to be aware of him. Because if you're not aware of him, that box and he can do,
it can definitely catch you off guard.
It can catch you off guard.
Titus, what have you been playing?
So we had a bit of a game day at Kyle's place today, and I was testing out some Empire stuff. I did one list with Krennic Vader and another list with Thrawn and something. Thrawn and GI, that was it. So both of them were essentially my attempts to find a home for the Elite Squad Troopers, which I enjoyed both lists. But yeah, it was mostly just experimenting time and trying some new stuff out. I also tried out Riff with Lumi. That was just the Riff box, and then Lumi, and then the core set droids. And yeah, I think I'm done with Riff for a while. Lumi is not a good pair for that, but in general, I think I'm getting a little burnt out on trying them out in Separatists. I might go back to them for Scoundrels, but I feel like the Separatist supports can't hold up to stuff these days.
Fair enough. Well, I got my first in-person games with Delta in today, which was very nice to start getting some testing. Had a few lists that I wanted to try out. I think my conclusion after a few games is they're certainly a good box. There's no doubt about that. I think a bit overhyped from the reaction that we initially got. I think there was a lot of talk of this is the next Inferno, and I don't know. I'm not seeing it so far. And I'll throw some playstyle caveats in there. I do tend to lean towards more defensive lists. Also, generally avoid mechanics that require to wound, especially in a meta where wounding can be a very dangerous thing to do. And, I found in each of those games that if Boss wasn't able to secure a wound on his turn, force economy was really, really tight. So first game I played with Obi, that was Delta Box and Obi, Rex, and the 212th. Titus, this was against you with the Krennic list you were running. I think we had a good game here. No real standouts. I definitely made some misplays. First time getting Delta on the table. But an early wound on Fixer meant things got expensive. As you left him on 5 health and a strain that I just wasn't able to get off. And it made the list doing anything it needed to do very, very difficult. In game 2, I played with Mace. This was Mace, Crosshair, and the 501st. Mace definitely helped the force problem. He wasn't super relevant outside of that, but he makes a very good force battery. And this definitely enabled some better play shenanigans. Got a lot more point bombs off in this game as well. This was against Josh playing Cassian Kanan, and I had built this Mace squad kind of just specifically to play around Kanan. My actual takeaway from this list is I would drop Crosshair for Wrecker in a heartbeat if this is going to be, hey, this is my anti-Cassian Kanan list. Just having multiple ways to wound around Kanan to avoid the trigger is really impactful, and I think that list actually does it better than most I've seen to intentionally avoid triggering Kanan. I was able to consistently have some wounds. We played on odds. It was very nice to have a Republic squad that could move and keep up with odds. This was my favorite game, I think, of the 3. The last one was Titus again, with you playing the droids. I played Delta Hunter with this one, with Hunter, Wolf, and the 212th. This one felt better than the Obi pairing did. It was a very effective aggro squad. Put out a ton of wounds, but that is, 1, not a playstyle I am looking to do, and 2, the forced restraint was also very, very rough. Rudy, I know you mentioned you've been toying around with Delta a bit. What are my thoughts so far lining up with yours, or how are you feeling?
Well, I must admit, I don't think I have enough reps to genuinely give a true opinion.
Oh, I'm 3 and I'm giving hot takes here.
I'm going to caveat that this is a spicy episode of Coordinated Fire.
Oh, okay.
This evening.
Okay.
We are going spicy.
But yeah, I mean, I think generally those are the 3 most common pairings right now that people are testing is Obi, Hunter, Mace. For the reasons that you mentioned, for sure. Yeah, I definitely would want to get some more reps in with all of the above before I start kind of analyzing where they fit in a premiere for me.
Fair.
But off the cuff, I definitely think that there is a spot for them in Republic. And this will be my hot.
Drop it.
Yeah, I don't really know what to call it. But so my friend Spitfire and I were discussing this many weeks ago, and I'm not really sure if Republic even has an answer to the Delta Squad box. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Obi can do it. I would want to test it more, but
so I think that's interesting, as Delta as a Republic counter. I think that's very real. I think the problem I'm trying to solve is Cassian, and I'm not sure they're the box for that. And I think that might be leading to where my takeaways are from today, because Republic actually has great counters to Republic in many forms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of unexplored territory there for Boss into Kanan Cassian. I don't want to shed too much light on Sam's list, but I did have some conversations with him about it this past weekend, and there's definitely, I think there's a portion of it that people are overlooking where, like you said, trying to get around the Kanan trigger and being worried that Kanan's going to shoot them in response. But it seems like maybe the attack in response isn't really the important part of that list, and maybe more of the movement. But I'll leave that to.
I actually completely agree. So, it is the movement. I'm trying to stop Kanan from getting that jump. I don't care about the 5 dice attack is what it is. I think especially Republic has defensive options well enough that 5 die is manageable. But having something over here jumping in any direction, having something over here advancing in any direction is just overwhelming.
And I think that's a lot of what one of Dean's list was about, was for Plo, right? And even the movement within that list, there's not a lot of out of activation outside of the revenge triggers, right? Because he's bringing Callus in that list. So if something gets force pushed away, it can be very, very difficult to get things back on points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like the displacement tactic into Kanan Cassian. I think you need to bring enough of it, and I think it needs to be 3 at kind of the minimum to be impactful enough.
Camp Vader 1?
Yeah, maybe. That brings its own liabilities, but with the list I've been playing, but you still run into how do I handle odds? And I think Delta has a really good answer to that piece at least. But I think we're in an exciting time for Republic list building.
Sweet. Awesome.
Cool. Let's jump into Nova with Rudy, starting with your run. So let's talk about your games played. So before we get into the main Nova event, you actually kicked off the weekend with the teams event, right?
Yes, yeah, it was an awesome experience.
How was the format? How was the teams event?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think they did a really good job coming up with something new and creative, and I don't think I heard anyone have any issues or complaints about the format. I actually spoke to several people who didn't compete in the GT and were literally there just for teams, and a few of them were like, yeah, this has actually been the highlight of my weekend, even though this is supposed to be an off day for me. So the format and the experience were fantastic. My team
and I
touching
on the format very, very briefly here for those that don't know. So it's teams of 3. So Rudy, you were on a team with two others, as was everybody, and every person took a showdown list, right? So you took just 2 squads. That was what you were playing for the entire event. And then there's a process for pairing and matchups as you go through, right?
Yes, yeah, it was really cool actually. Some interesting strategies as well in terms of how to approach the setup, if you will.
Yeah, like I've done teams events for 40K before. I think they can actually be one of the most competitive formats. I think you can take it definitely that casual approach, but I look at what WTC does for a lot of games. I know MCP has a good community for teams, as does all the GW games. So it's a format that I'd love to see grow for Shatterpoint. I think that would be absolutely incredible. But so for yourself, what did you play for the teams event?
Well, I do want to give a brief shout out to my 2 amazing teammates, Goblin with a Hat and goodness, what is his? Marmon, I believe is what he goes by on Discord. They were awesome. They both played their favorite factions respectively in Republic and Empire. I myself was my typical self and had no idea what I was going to play until like the day before. So I played Freedom Fighter Leia with Chirpa, just for fun. So it was Freedom Fighter Leia with 3PO and Commandos, and then Chirpa with Wicket and the Ewok Hunters.
And you crushed.
Yeah, I didn't lose a game that day, but it was only 3 rounds. But someone did tell me that apparently after the event was over, Chirpa was the #1 primary. So new meta, Chirpa's #1.
3-0 with 100% win rate, apparently. So
new teams meta. Let's go, Chirpa, all the way.
I'll touch on Ewoks here for a second, because I think they're currently underrepresented from what I think those lists can actually do. The 3PO rework is incredible.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. When I was picking my list for Nova in terms of the GT itself, I actually very much considered bringing Ewoks, and I do think there's a place for them in the meta.
I say Ewoks loosely because there's very few actual Ewoks anywhere near those lists, but they have the tag.
They do, and I usually just say they're the masters of disguise, so that's why they don't look like Ewoks.
Love it. All right, on to the main day after a great team's run.
Yes, so before I say anything about my run, I just wanted to reiterate one more time just how amazing of a job the TOs did. Anthony, Matt, and Simon, they were fantastic, super accessible the entire weekend. The event was awesome. So I just wanted to say that very briefly, but yes,
That is amazing. I guess before we touch on rounds, do you want to go through your list?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to one that many people have probably seen before. So if anybody's familiar with Duncan's Gen Con list, it's very, very similar. I ran the item box as is. I ran the Moff box as is. So that's Moff, DTE, and Darks. And I forgot to say it's Iden, Hask, and ISF for those that don't know. Yep. Then it's Krennic with Vader 3 and the Death Troopers. And then my 4th list was Grand Inquisitor with OB2 and 5th Brother.
Mm-hmm. And can you just quickly again, you made a change to the Moff squad last minute with DTE and the Darks. Can you quickly touch on that and just kind of what made you move towards that change?
Sure, yeah. Yes, so the original list included 3rd Sister and 4th Sister under Moff Gideon. In my testing, I'll be honest, I didn't have the most opportunities with that list to get, I guess, quality reps in. And then in addition to that, I was concerned about the survivability of 4th Sister and just the efficacy of that squad in general. So I decided to swap to something that I knew worked very well and that I knew was quite good. I still think the Dark Troopers are one of the best supports in the game despite the nerf. So I figured I'd go for unit quality over maybe a more niche pick. So that's kind of where the change came from. And I also thought maybe it would give me a slightly better matchup into Cassian list specifically.
Yeah, so I also played this list. I think you and I have talked before at our St. Catharines event, and I feel the exact same way. I mean, Reva and Fourth is a nice package, and you said it's a very neat and a very nice niche pick, but I think, like you said, when I play this list, I'll be switching to DT and Darks in that squad specifically, like you said, for unit quality. And I think Kyle and Titus and I have talked about just like the idea of not taking DTE in an Empire Premier list is
It's insane.
it's kind of
bonkers.
crazy. It's kind of crazy, right? And like I get the Rebel 4 package is nice, but like you said, most of my play patterns with Four Sister is that you want her on a point, right? So if she range attacks, you want her on a point for the tiebreaker, and then I don't know how you feel about it, but like within the next activation or two, she just gets roasted, and then you're down, single body support. Yeah, she's a tiebreaker,
Yeah, my philosophy when it comes to at least this premiere was very much I need to make sure that if I'm in a tight spot where the terrain's terrible and I need a good activation, that they're capable of doing it. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that a support is one of your most impactful activations, and Fourth Sister can do that, but it is very order deck reliant. And I don't think it's news to anyone that OB2 is also kind of order deck reliant at times, and I didn't like the idea of having both of those. So that was another reason for the swap.
absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
No, that's totally fair. And we are going to end up talking about OB2 a little more in depth as we go through today.
Yeah. Before we continue on a little bit, is there anything you would change going forward after finishing the event up?
So, okay. I feel like I am kind of breaching some sort of code by saying this, but I would be open to exploring what the list looks like in a 2x2, but I'm not sure which of the 3 non-GI squads it would be in said 2x2. But as far as if I had to change something about the full premiere itself, no, I actually don't think I would change anything. I think it worked exactly like it was supposed to, and I think the games I lost were not list issue, they were pilot issue.
Yeah, so basically, if you're going full Empire, this is what you're rocking, but it might end up looking like a 2x2.
I was going to say too, yeah. Are you of the thought, Rudy? Because I kind of am. Is this one of the best Empire premieres that you can run right now?
Ooh, I feel like
Because I think so. I think it is.
I feel like you wouldn't take it if it wasn't.
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
because we also saw we still see Thrawn, we still see Vader 1 with Inquisitors.
yeah, I think Thrawn is definitely underexplored at the moment. We saw, I mean, Eric did a fantastic job with Thrawn his premiere at Nova, and he ended up in the top 8 as well. So I don't necessarily know if the other aspects of Empire are unplayable, but I do think that this particular premiere covers a lot of bases and is very good. So yes, I would say it is. Maybe, I don't know if it's the best because I haven't done enough testing with Thrawn since the balance, but I definitely think it's one of the best versions to take.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Honestly, but I think you point out, and we'll go through a little more of the event a bit later, but Grand Moff Eric did absolutely have a great run with Thrawn in the Swiss. And I wouldn't count the Blue Man out.
He's still very fun to play.
He is. He's one of my favorites. I'm not as hot on him as some are right now, but we'll see how it goes.
All right, let's get through your games for the Swiss, Rudy. Let's go.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a deep breath because I feel like I finally can, because this was brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Every single person I played at this event was a phenomenal player, and I am very fortunate that I was able to come out on the winning side. In round 1, I had to play someone I've actually played before at a GT, and it was one of the worst games of Shatterpoint I've ever played. Not his fault, but totally the terrain's fault at the time. So I had to play Dr. Chrono Rex. His name's Michael. And this was a great game. He had Kamakin and Obi Mace, and obviously you guys know what I had. My plan going into this was, all right, I'm going to drop him off in round 1, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. And then I saw his premiere, and I was like, oh, well, maybe we can't do that anymore. So I felt like my best chance was GI Iden, because it at least has a great matchup into Kamakin, and it can climb over Obi Mace. And this was a very, very back and forth game. I controlled 4 points in Struggle 1, and then somehow suddenly did not control 4 points in Struggle 1 on shifting. And so I had to win it from behind. I was able to close Struggle 2 and Struggle 3. And yeah, it was a very solid game from him and just some variants that went my way.
Awesome. How impactful was OB2 for this one?
Oh my gosh, he was the all-star. I drew him first. I ran him up to the middle point, and it was a point that had like a small box on one side, but most of the point was being contested from a single gantry, so kind of had a weird spot where he could sit, and he wasn't able to really be shoved off much, and so he quite literally just sat there the whole game. It was fantastic.
That's been my experience too, is that on shifting, if OB2 can sit in the middle on shifting,
It makes for a tough run.
it's sweet. It's good.
I think,
Awesome. And then round 2 against Lawlin.
yeah, Lawlen's a cool guy. I'd never met him before, but it seems like he's been around the scene for a little bit, maybe from the Northeast or something. So he had a bit of a tricky premiere for me as well. He had OB Hunter, I believe it was, and then PLC and Cassian. And then he informed me that he was playing First Contact. And I had a little bit of a miniature heart attack, but I have reps on First Contact, so I was like, okay, just gotta get Moff out of the way now. My thought process was Moff Gideon at least is a tiebreaker. So when First Contact gets a little spread out, I can have a tiebreaker on those points that are single contested. Maybe that'll help. But it was a good game. Unfortunately, terrain kind of prevented him from having a lot of impact with his revenge triggers. I was able to get Iden and her entire squad up onto the far outside point in Struggle 1, and that kind of determined how that struggle went because I had 4 bodies on it for most of it. And then on the other side of the table, Moff and the Dark Troopers just did what they do. They broke ties and they shoved people off and pinned them. And then Struggle 2 was just exactly the same thing.
It's interesting how a lot of vertical terrain can really impact Cassian's relevance. Extra mobility is never going to hurt by any means, but if there's less ingress points and you can't get them up, it can be a lot less effective.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm definitely of the mindset that PLC is not necessarily one of the best pairings for him in terms of a revenge focus, which was another reason why I thought I could drop Iden here and be okay. And that is exactly what happened. The terrain kind of prevented PLC from being impactful whatsoever. And by the time she could be, the game was practically over and he had 4 dead models.
Yeah, add in the fact that Moff with against Cassian basically means he cannot reserve, period.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Round 3, this starts to get spicier. Round 3 is against Duncan.
Yeah, Duncan and I are good buddies. We play pretty consistently. I don't know. I don't want to say multiple times a week, but honestly, sometimes multiple times a week. So his premiere was very spicy. He had the Separatist premiere he's been playing for a little while now, since Gen Con, and I hadn't played Krennic yet. And I'll be honest, I came into this thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to lose a game, let's make it be the round where I play Krennic and then I vent my destiny and it is what it is. But he ended up dropping Kit, Fisto, and Riff into me, and it was a very back and forth game, and it ultimately just came down to OB2 sitting on a point near the middle, and it was up on a building where only one model could fit. And he just sat there and held it for a long time. And then Krennic just started stealing points away. Krennic actually won me both the struggles I got because he just walked up and took the point.
That's the best. That's the best thing about Krennic is that
He does that.
Elevation doesn't matter. He just goes up and goes, "Thank you, mine now."
Yeah,
it's great.
It's very clutch in Struggle 3. Oftentimes you really have to make sure you flip a point in Struggle 3, and Krennic says, "Yeah, I can make that happen."
Yes, this was a pretty bloody game too. I think you had 5 wounds. Duncan had 6.
Yeah, it was a very bloody game. I think both of us understood that this was going to be a tough game either way you sliced it, because we both respect each other as players, and so we knew that, hey, there's no revenge triggers on the table. Wounds matter in tiebreakers. Okay, let's make sure we get as many as we can, but also play a good game. And that's what we did.
Awesome. So moving on to round 4, and you got to play against Scott,
the reigning champ.
Yeah, I guess this has become kind of the infamous game of the weekend. Yeah, Scott and I had never actually played in person before. We're in multiple Discords together, but this was my first time officially playing him. And I knew he had Riff Cassian, and then on the other half, I think he had PLC Kanan, I believe it was. And if anybody that knows Scott and pays attention to what he does at tournaments, he does typically drop one list in round 1 and then play the other one the rest of the tournament. So I had a pretty good indication that he was going to play Riff Cassian into me, which led me to kind of branch out a little bit in my premiere. I didn't have a ton of testing with GI Moff, but I had enough that I felt comfortable. And so I dropped GI Moff into him. And this was just, honestly, I think this was one of the best tactical and strategic games I've ever played. It was really tight. We both had good activations, bad activations. Honestly, we were reviewing it afterwards. We both only made one major mistake that we can see, and I don't even know if his would be considered a major mistake. Mine was definitely a major mistake. It cost me Struggle 2. But yeah, it was a very clean game, very good game. And afterwards, well, I mean, everybody knows what happens afterwards.
I find very frequently, and Sean and I have discussed this a lot over time, but as you get to those top tables, whether it's top cut or the end of Swiss, often games are decided by one mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It just takes one thing and it just goes off course. Absolutely. If you don't mind, Rudy, just real quick, you noted that you kind of went off course here a little bit with the GI and the Moth pick. What were kind of your thoughts in doing that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna back up a little bit and kind of explain a little bit of the thought process with the Moth squad a little further. I had very little intention of playing GI with Moth. The idea initially was just drop Iden and Moth together, play it as a 2x2 almost if I needed to. And then I knew this was a flex option for me, specifically if I came up against a full Rebel Premiere or something of that nature. The thought process that led to me dropping Moth and GI here was more of, okay, I was confident he was going to drop Rift Cassian, so that's 4 force. If I can make it to where he has to spend half his force early on because he draws something he doesn't want, then that's great. Or if I can force him to have a bad activation early on, that's also great. The other thought was, I obviously don't want to kill very early if I don't have to. I want to focus on condition stacking, moving off points, things of that nature. And both the GI squad and the Moth squad are very good at that. You know, you've got Fifth Brother who breaks ties. You've got OB2 who can just sit there and hold a point and be an annoyance. GI is very, very mobile, very, very slept on in that capacity. And then everybody knows what Moth, DTE, and Darks do. And they're also very good at all of those things. So that honestly ended up being the story of this game. It was very much, I walked up, I shoved somebody off the point, they're pinned, they're strained. And I think at one point he had multiple models that were double conditioned at least. And it just became a game of, okay, what is our order deck giving us?
Amazing. That's, yeah, great analysis. I love that.
I think, like, especially in a list with Dark Troopers, Empire's very good at doing that.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that. I think it's something that Empire does very well and that people do not acknowledge enough. I think a lot of times Empire is looked at as the murder faction, but since the balance patch, I think
that's definitely changed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's the Iden effect. Everyone's still in shock from it.
I mean, she's still great. Don't get me wrong. She's still very good at that.
Awesome. Well, and I know there was a bounty on Scott.
Yes.
So there was specifically a trophy for that win. Do you have it on you?
I do. I don't know how much Scott would appreciate me showing it, but
I'd appreciate it.
Scott'll be fine. I'll give the vouch.
There we go. So this was
that is amazing.
That's amazing. Congratulations, man. Honestly,
thank you. It was
incredible. All right, let's jump into round 5. Again, spoiler alert: the eventual champion of the event.
Yeah, I don't know how many listeners are familiar with Sam Sweeten, but the dude is really, really good at Shatterpoint. And I'll be honest, after beating Scott in round 4, knowing I had locked in top cut, I think I probably told Sam about 3 or 4 times. I was like, dude, I'm going to turn my brain off for this game. I wish it wasn't even a seeded top cut, because I was like, if it wasn't a seeded top cut, I'd stretch my hand out and say good game. Because I was
5 rounds is a long day.
Yeah.
It is a long day.
I think we had just finished setup and one of the TOs came over and told us that it was already like 8:15 or 8 o'clock. And I was like, and we still have a whole game to play. So yeah, I'll admit I was probably not at my tactical best for this game, but I was just completely outclassed here. Sam played a fantastic game. I dropped GI Moth. He dropped Cassian and Jin into me. And I do believe that version of his list, he has Jin, K2, Lando, and Bartu with Cassian, Ezra, and Bazin Chirrut. I believe. No, sorry, Cassian, Callus, Bazin Chirrut.
Yes, Callus.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And that, yeah, I mean, that list is just so dynamic and also has such better math. It doesn't matter that the Moth tax was there. It honestly didn't matter that the Moth tax was there.
And that's Sam Sweeten in a player. For anybody that knows how Sam plays and how he analyzes and dissects this game, he is all about the math. He's a very surgical player. He knows his lines. He knows the math. So that's a very good way to put it.
I will say that it is unfortunate I did lose this 2-0 because it did knock me quite a ways down in standings. I went from being the guaranteed 3rd seed, even if I lost, if I won a struggle, to being I think it was the 6th seed. So that kind of sucked, but ultimately I'm also okay with it being such a short game because I was genuinely just so spent. I could have pulled a struggle out if I maybe didn't make a big mistake with Fifth Brother. There was a building where models couldn't be seen from either side of the table, basically, but they were still contesting a point, and I didn't see that his Jin was still back there, and it was completely my fault because we had talked about her being there and I knew she was there. It wasn't like he hid it or anything. I just forgot. And so I repulsed everybody except for her. And well, he doesn't win the point for me if if there's only, let's see, I think it was my Moff Gideon was dead, but he still had 2 models on the point. So I was like, never mind, I don't break a tie.
That is rough. But honestly, these are the things that happen at the end of a 5-round day.
Oh, I mean, even any point in the day, I think we've all had that moment where we just didn't see a model on the table. Like, it happens.
Yeah. Very similar to my story at Adepticon too. I vented to Kyle about this too. I took a loss last round at Adepticon that changed my seeding and in the top 32 that put me against Duncan. And I was like, I should not have lost that last game. I fumbled hard, so I feel you. I feel
honestly,
you, my man.
Sean, in the same boat. You watched my game in the top cut against Cody. And
yeah, where you didn't dash.
I didn't see
who
my
it
own
was.
Padawan. It was a Padawan, and
Yes.
the terrain piece where I was sitting, I just couldn't see my own Padawan.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was sitting right there. Remember, I had the popcorn and the beer, and I was like, I couldn't say anything.
stayed nice and quiet.
And then Cody at the end of the game was like, "You didn't dash your Padawan," and I'm like, "Kyle, yeah, you didn't dash your Padawan, buddy."
Yeah, I was on a back foot by that point anyway.
Yeah.
But wow, do those feelings at after a really good run do not feel great.
Yeah, it was. I will admit there was some solace in the fact that I knew I was in Top Cut regardless. So it was okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like, man, really wish I could have won a struggle here.
For sure. But overall, man, like an incredible day, an incredible run through Swiss. You went through the gauntlet of opponents. 3 of your opponents ended up in the top cut. I don't think any of your opponents went less than 3-2.
That's correct. Yeah. Going into round 5, every person I had played was 3-1.
You had the highest strength of schedule I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. multiple time GT winners. I mean, dude, there's nothing wrong with taking an L at the end of the day here.
And it couldn't happen against a nicer dude because I love Sam.
Yeah.
Sam's rock solid.
Yeah. Very cool guy.
All right. And then you got a rematch against Scott in the finals.
I did.
1.
Yeah, round 1 of Top Cut ended up being me and Scott for the rematch. So I must kind of give a little disclaimer here for anyone that's going to end up watching the recorded games from that event. I actually did explicitly ask not to be on camera during Swiss because I get a little bit of stage fright. So unfortunately, we couldn't get the first match of me and Scott on camera, but this one in Top Cut was on camera. So it will be out there for people to watch eventually, but it was a very good game. I should have trusted my gut and dropped GI Moff once more. I thought maybe just understanding that Scott is a very competitive person and I assumed he wanted to win because why else would you compete as much as you do? So I swapped into GI Krennic here, but in reality, I think I should have played GI Moff. So he was able to take it 2-1 on shifting. I'll admit, near the end of the game, I had a really bad order deck in Struggle 3. It prevented me from reacting to the flop at all. So basically, when Struggle 3 flipped over, I knew the game was probably over. But we fought it out. We played the best we could, and it was just a genuinely good game. So now, Scott and I are 1-1.
That can happen a lot on shifting, though.
It absolutely can. It absolutely can. So
Did you feel the Krennic squad just wasn't the right choice? It just didn't give you the same options the Moff Squad did, or?
Well, so it was kind of a few compounding issues. Obviously, Cassian Riff can be a very aggressive list and has a lot of hard hitters. I think we were discussing maybe before the cast just how awesome Riff is, and I think you mentioned it at the beginning even too. Just he can surprise you. I was fortunate enough to have plenty of reps into Riff previously, thanks to playing Duncan a lot. It was just a lot of compounding things. I drew Death Troopers first in Struggle 1, so instead of spending a force to reserve, I just went ahead and took 2 points, hoping that maybe he wouldn't be able to respond to both, and then he was able to with Baze and Churret, and it was just a lot of if-then things that happened that made it feel less impactful. I do think Moff would have been better, though, because he did end up reserving, I think, 3 times over the course of that game, and he wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Awesome. Well, again, Rudy, congrats on the incredible run. Again, we touched on this a bit at the beginning, but maybe it was before the cast, but we were all very excited to have you on. A very active member of our Discord and community, and honestly, a great dude. So we were very excited to have you on. It was a great run with Empire. Looking at the overall event, if If I were a betting man ahead of time, I would not have put money on there being 3 Empire Premier lists in the top 8 cut. I think that is, and that full Empire Premier list has been discussed on quite a few episodes of ours. It's, very similar to what Sean's been running for some time now. We saw a lot of it at Gen Con, which we've discussed previously. I think there were a lot of reactions post rebalance that, maybe Empire wasn't up to snuff without broken Dark Troopers and Iden running around doing it, whatever she wants all the time. But I think it may have taken a while to settle, but I think Empire's in a great spot. And I think it comes from just being well-rounded. I don't think you have anything in any slot that's a particularly bad choice or a sacrifice you have to make with the releases that we have at this point. I don't really look at any of those squads and say you've had to take a worse option here because what you really want is in another list. Which I think just opens up, like Republic's in a very similar point for list building. And I think Rebels are just hitting that stride now with the Cassian and Jin box coming out, where you can make that full Premier list without making any significant sacrifices.
I will say with the Empire stuff, the list building can be a little bit complicated because you have 3 eras to work with where Republic has 1, and the point costs are all over the place with the Empire primaries.
That's because you really want to play Elite Squad Troopers.
Well, no,
Yeah,
but
you're
it's
on an
true,
EST
though.
kick right
like,
now, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
definitely some awkward choices to make. Like, you got
There's
stuff
definitely awkward
in...
choices when you start touching the 7s.
Yeah.
That's for sure. You've
Yeah.
got, at the very least, Thrawn and Vader Veers exists as well. But you've got Thrawn and Vader that basically require Stormtrooper Sergeant with little other option.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get another 3-pointer.
Yeah, Empire 3-pointer in the future would be fantastic. And I think what I love most about this run, Rudy, and even with Duncan's run too, is again, like when the rebalance happened, everyone was like, well, Empire's dead now. And I was saying, okay, well, maybe we just need to change our thinking, right? But this, for me, very much being an Empire player who was very down in the dumps post rebalance, and my 2 co-hosts here can attest to that. I was very down in the dumps about my favorite models and stuff in the game for a while, but
your 2 co-hosts also told you they were perfectly fine.
Right,
putting that on the record.
Okay, so yes, but this has solidified for me that they're still in a great spot, and I think I said actually post rebalance that Empire players just needed to change their thinking a little bit.
100%.
Right, is that Empire was not the same fact. It wasn't, like you said, point Ein somewhere, shoot and kill, and I'd said off the hop that anybody that wants to run Empire is going to have to change their thinking. And I think guys like you and Duncan have given Empire players like me who were in a very confused place post rebalance a little bit of hope here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing about Empire that got overlooked during the Iden dominance was that a lot of I guess it wasn't overlooked, but it just wasn't emphasized enough just how overstated the other members of Empire actually were. And then I particularly think that Empire is very good in an open Swiss, just strictly because of the overstated / maybe just well-statted nature of the faction. You've got, DTE's 9 health with protection and is very, very good. And just having genuinely good models in your list when you're going into an open Swiss field is very important. And it's not the only faction that has that, but any faction that has it can do well. And I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, like I've commented on numerous occasions that almost any of the supports and Empires, if you slotted them into Republic or Separatists with the appropriate tags, would just instantly be the best support in the faction.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love the shine that Krennic's getting too, because Krennic has been a favorite model of mine since he came out. So
he's a really interesting primary, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the rest of this top 8, we had Sam Sweeten as with a full Rebel Premier list as a Cassian anchor. The highlight for me here is the taking of Lando and R2, which I think have been in a lot of cases put to the wayside for a lot of Rebels players. I have found them incredible anytime I've ever put them on the table. I think they're an impressive 3 cost at the very least. And Rebels have the 5 costs to kind of balance out those lists. K2 in particular. They're fast. They can avoid being shot at. It's really cool to see them there. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything super surprising here. I know Sam's very high on Callus in that anchor spot. I think Ezra would make a great case for being there as well. Sam took the event, so congrats to Sam. Then we had, I think, the big surprise for everyone, Duncan running a full Separatist list, taking that to the finals of Nova with Grievous, Dooku, Riff, and Kit. Check out the list. Honestly, I couldn't even dive into touching this, but I do think, OB2 in that Dooku squad is really interesting. I think Dooku is one of the best houses for OB2, and how much OB2 can just change a game.
Yeah, I think OB2 changes. OB2, like other things such as Jin and Callus, completely changes the math of a game and breaks the rules of the game even.
No, completely agree. And Dooku can fuel that force for forever, and will even just give more by you attempting to wound OB2.
Yeah, and one of the big problems with Separatists is their supports are real fragile and nothing really punishes for wounding them. So OB2 helps to mitigate that lack of toughness by making them tougher, which is not something we have any other unit that does. So it's a good slot in there.
Yeah, he's bodyguarding them, essentially. Yeah, cool.
Which is awesome. We've talked about Scott's Cassian Riff quite a bit already. Rudy, to what you pointed out, he played as Kanan Leia once and never looked back. Clearly, Cassian Riff was what Scott came in with the intention to play. We see Dean coming in with a full Republic list. Vader is a Republic primary. Very focused on displacement across all these squads, except for the Kit Fisto squad. I love this list. I think there's a lot of similarities into what I like to run in Republic here. Still am diehard on the train that Vader is still better than Anakin. And I will continue to die on that hill.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny you say that. Before Nova happened, I was answering a series of questions in another Discord, kind of like a fantasy thing almost. And one of the things I wrote in there was that I thought Anakin was actually going to do very poorly at this event. And I believe he did do very poorly. So it's...
We'll touch on a bit of win rates here in a second, but he did very poorly. Now, and I will say this here, because there's going to be a few primaries that did not have a good run. Obi-Wan is another one. But I also, a lot of times when you look, again, I think you could have banked on Separatists not having a good run here either. And I think a lot of times what does well is dictated by what top players take, less so than is this list viable. And I think we're seeing that really come to fruition a lot more as we get further into Shatterpoint's competitive scene.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I said that today too, is that it really feels like the people that have reps with whatever they feel is what they feel comfortable with, or what they feel is also the best thing. And even if it's not the consensus best thing, they just know their list inside and out. And it's a confidence level. It's understanding the plays. Like you said, Rudy, it's understanding, hey, if the terrain sucks, I have models. This is what they can do around bad terrain. It's knowing all those small nuances that I think is really putting, like you said, Kyle, these top players in these top spots, no matter what they're bringing.
And we had one Delta squad end up with, is Delta Hunter. Titus, I was wrong earlier. I mean, it was Delta Hunter that Red Wolf played, made it in the top 8 as well. I was expecting a little more representation from Delta, but on the flip side, this is still a very recent release, and I imagine there's a lot of people that don't quite have the reps they were comfortable in, especially from my experience today of the Delta's list it's going to take reps to get comfortable with. That is some of the trickiest play that I've experienced from a squad box.
Yeah, I also think it's worth noting that if you look between the 9th through 16th or whatever, however far down the 3 and 2s go, there is quite a bit of boss between 20th and 9th place where all the 3 and 2s are. So
awesome. So taking a look a bit at the meta, one thing I wanted to touch on was missions. We saw 18 Sabotage Showdown, 12 Never Tell Me the Odds, 9 Shifting Priorities, and 2 First Contact. I think the community as a whole continues to push back on First Contact as a viable competitive mission, and I don't blame them. If I had any intention on going to an event with an attempt to win, I think there's just too much variance in First Contact and things that can just go the wrong way to be a viable competitive piece. We see Sabotage continue to be dominant, but I think this was really a return Never Tell Me the Odds in the competitive scene in a lot of ways, where we've seen, a lot of moving away from odds compared to the previous meta since the rebalance. And we're starting to see odds come back really to the forefront, which, with how much Republic is out there right now, can create some interesting problems.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rudy, from the Republic players that you were speaking to pre-event, were there a lot of people talking about like that they were worried about running into odds with their list?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I think that the ones that were playing boss felt totally fine. They
100%.
were
Yeah.
very actually looking forward to maybe seeing someone think they had an advantage by dropping odds, and then they just drop boss. But the non-boss players definitely were actively planning around odds, if that kind of answers your question.
Yep.
Yeah,
and sometimes you just don't run into it.
I don't think I played odds.
No, you didn't. No.
Yeah, I think I played First Contact, Sabotage, and Shifting all day.
Yeah, considering I think
That
there's
kind of begs the question: how much of it was in like the top lists? I'm curious now.
I know that Eric
So-
had
Like Sam had
odds.
Sabotage.
Red Wolf had odds.
I think it was Eric and Red Wolf, I think. That was it, right?
Scott also had Sabotage. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense for Eric because he's playing Thrawn, right? So that makes that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of Sabotage in the top cut.
Cassian's really great on Sabotage.
Yeah, that's fair.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah, just the fact that you worry about a lack of out of activation movement and you rely on your revenge triggers to get things up the board, and Sabotage just being able to say, well, now all of my activations can always reach a point
Yeah.
because they're so close to each other. It really helps the math for that list.
Amazing.
100%. As for
Well,
some win rates, you touched a bit, Rudy. You touched a bit on the Anakin piece, because there's been a lot of talk about Kiadi Anakin being a top list. I mostly play Republic at this point. It's been that for quite some time. I bounced off of it pretty hard because it's very feast or famine on Anakin doing what Anakin needs to do. If Anakin whiffs, the list falls apart.
Well, it's also on when Anakin activates, because like if you get him too early, he can't get to anyone, and if you get him late enough that everything's dead, all that movement doesn't help him.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts there, Rudy?
I was just thinking back.
I see the wheels turning.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a newer player that picks up Kamikin, or even just a competent player that picks it up and doesn't understand, or maybe doesn't approach it in the same way as the people that are playing it 24/7 all the time, they definitely have different philosophies when they're dropping that list, right? So maybe there's an extra amount of reliance on Anakin there.
Yeah,
Again, don't worry, I value it's not a bad list by any measure. There's a lot of synergy for what a Kiadi squad and what Anakin's looking to.
It's just a high expertise list. You need to be proficient with it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Anakin came out with a 26% win rate.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that low.
5 wins, 14 losses.
Wow.
Yeah,
And again,
Whew.
that is not to say Anakin is a bad piece, to be very clear. Because honestly, a lot less games, but Mace came out with a 17% win rate.
Yeah, I
And I
knew Mace bombed here for sure.
And I think Mace is an incredible primary.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at a similar story, and again, you see General Kenobi, who's kind of hovered around that 55% since rebalance across the board, but went 11 and 15 here at 42%.
That's really interesting.
This was not Republic's event for the most part. Dean did very well, which brought up Jedi Hunter. Kiadi coming in at kind of a 57. We see some great representation from our Rebel primaries across the board. Kanan coming out at 67%. At 58.
What about the GI win rate?
We'll get to Empire in a second. You get out of here.
Listen, I got my boy with me here tonight. This is good. I like this.
Cassian's an interesting one because we saw a very heavy saturation for Cassian. Was played in 39 games, went 22 and 17 at 56%. But there was also a lot of Cassian versus Cassian games, which is always going to push towards 50% because someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. And again, when you see that level of saturation from top to bottom, you're going to see that drift towards 50%. I don't think that's a reflection of how well Cassian did at this at the event. For Empire, Grand Inquisitor is very clearly leading Empire in what Empire is able to do currently. Rudy, you mentioned if you went to a 2x2, it would be GI with something else. Because next down we have Thrawn at 55%, 1, 6, and 5, and everyone else is kind of under that 50% mark on the Empire side. The other one that I was surprised with was Hunter came in at a 63%, which is the best Hunter has done in a very long time.
He had a decent number of games too. Like
he 19
got,
games,
as well.
went 12 and 7. And honestly, as Hunter being one of my favorite primaries in the game, it is just nice to see Hunter back. And that wasn't just with Boss. Hunter actually did a lot better than Boss did from a win rate perspective. But like Hunter Boss in 14 games came out with a 79% win, which is actually incredible.
That's quite good.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
Again, we saw one of those crack the top 8, but this is going to be something we're seeing more of for sure as this continues to as people start to figure out Delta and how this plays. My instinct right now is I don't think Hunter's the best pairing, but clearly the data would disagree with me.
It's early days.
I still want to try. I still want.
Yeah, I have trouble with 5 Force.
You have trouble with like not having 7 or 8 Force, my friend. You are our Force hog in the group. You like to have as many little
complain
stacks.
At 6 with no regen.
I was just gonna say, the more yellow dots you have on your side, the happier you are, my friend.
I want to play with my toys.
I know. Sweet. Awesome.
But overall, Nova was an absolutely incredible event. Rudy, again, congrats. This is one I would love to go to. You know, I think from a drive perspective, this isn't crazy, so might be on my agenda for.
Yeah, it's a fantastic event. The hotel's pretty cool, and it's right in the heart of DC. So I mean, it's really an awesome event all around. Just as a small shout out, the K tournament had 401 players and took up the entire ballroom. So it was a really cool thing to see that many people playing a miniatures game.
That's huge.
That's
amazing,
lot
dude.
of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
But
You know,
yeah,
10%
overall,
of
great
that
event.
over there playing Shatterpoint. I like that. But honestly, you know, 41 players is great for a Shatterpoint event. It's, outside of Worlds, there's not many that get that level of attendance. So it's amazing to see. Again, this is a super competitive field, and flights aren't too expensive, so that might get me next year.
Are we flying to Washington? Is that what you're trying to say, my friend?
I'd be tempted because I got family in that area. So
Yeah.
Titus is in too. All right. This is a conversation for sure. Awesome. So one of the standouts, I think, from a lot of the pre-discussion, you know, there was a lot of discussion about OB2 prior to this event, and has been a lot of discussion during and post this event. OB2's come down to a very controversial piece.
Mm-hmm.
On whether he is good or not. To be clear, I think we all are universal in our opinion that OB2 is an incredible secondary in a
Very
game warping
unanimous. Yes.
secondary. Yes, you know, OB2's activations are not the strongest. They can honestly be downright awful sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the impact OB2 will have on the rest of the game, and I think we saw a lot of that come to fruition of maybe catching some people by surprise. Rudy, from your experience, did you find people were prepped to play in OB2?
In Top
You
Cut,
played against a very high caliber player all the way through, so
yeah, I was gonna say like definitely in Top Cut, nobody was surprised to see him there. I don't think in Swiss, I still don't think that my opponents were unaware of him. They maybe weren't. It's not like their lists were teched against him or they were actively planning for him, but they were very much aware of him and knew that when they saw him in my list, they had to change their play pattern.
Yeah. And you said, Rudy, that some games that he won you the game, that he was super impactful.
Yeah, I of the 5 Swiss games, I'm gonna omit the last one with Sam because that one I don't even really remember, to be honest. Of the 4 games that I won, I would say that OB2 won me easily the first round. I didn't play him in the second round. Third round, he was impactful. Fourth, yeah, I mean, of the three games I played him in Swiss, he was highly impactful and definitely won me at least a struggle, if not the game.
Yeah, like I was doing some back of the napkin math, and if you took all the games OB2 was played in throughout the tournament, he had a higher win rate than any primary in the event, except for Dooku and Plo Koon. He had a 77%
which were
win
low
rate.
saturation of games.
Yeah, those two.
Yeah.
But OB2 was, I think, like 13 games or something like that, which is getting up there. Obviously, not a true comparison because we only have stats for primaries, and he's a secondary. So, like, but it still goes to show that secondaries brought across completely diverse lists still can perform really, really well. And he was, it's one of our pet characters that we like to see doing well because we're all really high on him.
Yeah, and we saw OB2 in 3 of the 8 of the top 8, which is incredible representation for a non-faction secondary. And again, a lot of the discussion ahead of time, we've heard other casts. I think Zion's put him in C tier in the recent tier list they did. Rogue Support called out what I think it was Matt's prediction that there would be
there would be no
OB2 in the top 16.
In the top 16. yeah. And again, let's just kind of frame this in that we're not calling anybody out here.
No.
It's just that we have just had such a wildly different opinion on this model than other players have, and we're trying to, I guess, find out kind of the thinking of why that is.
I'm getting there.
yeah.
It's the philosophy behind. You get a lot of units that people are saying, well, you could play around them. You could play around them. They're not going to be good against experienced players because you can play around them. And I feel like that really, we've had that before, like with the old Django, with various revenge characters. Even Obi-Wan gets that a lot. And I feel like it's ignoring the opportunity cost that people pay for playing around these units. For example, using OB2, because that's the one we've got right now, just because you either avoid his bubble or pick your attacks very specifically within his bubble, you're not making the optimal play that you would if he wasn't there. So just his threat of activation is causing a player to make suboptimal plays. That's a cost. Whether or not the ability gets used in the game whatsoever, it's still changing the trajectory of the game. And I feel like a lot of fairly good players will, like, not necessarily congratulate themselves, but like say, oh, well, I did so well because I didn't fall into that trap. It's like, well, that's a 2-layered trap. Even if you don't trigger the ability, you're still playing into that player's game plan, because OB2's real strength is just making this bubble where everything is safe. You can put a unit in there that you don't want wounded, and it's probably not going to get wounded.
Yeah, and Titus, I completely agree, which is, again, that the conversation you and I were having is kind of what sparked this. But revenge triggers fall in a very similar category. I think at the height of pre-rebalance Kanan, a lot of perspectives were, well, you can play around the revenge trigger. You can choose when you're willing to take that wound and when you're not. But forcing your opponent to have to think about that rather than just being able to freely wound when they want to by their prerogative changes the game. It changes your decision making. And I think every piece you have that forces these decision points leads to another occasion where someone can make a mistake.
Yeah, it's part of what makes Cassian so amazingly good.
100%, because
there's so many choices to make.
You have to analyze the entire board state when you wound something when you're playing against Cassian. And if you miss an ingress point, if you miss a model that was up, the struggle can just start to fall apart.
Yeah.
Titus, you mentioned Obi-Wan in this category too, because I think a lot of top players and a lot of players specifically in the American meta tend to look at Kenobi and say, you can play around this. You either punch up and over the hunkers, dead units don't matter, or you avoid shooting into bad targets.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a game you had with Dean at our last GT. He said he literally never attacked something that had a hunker token, which he won the game.
Yeah,
it worked for him.
In St. Catharines, you mentioned that.
But Dean and I ended that game because he was playing Kane and Cassian. I had 0 wounds and he had 2 in a 3-struggle game.
Yeah.
It changed the game. He still won it. He was able to play around it. Yeah. But would he necessarily have won quicker or by a larger margin if OB2 or OB1 wasn't there.
Right. And I think, and we had this conversation pretty recently, that step one of getting the top cut of an event is getting through the Swiss. And I think these pieces can be very, very Swiss effective. And whether it lands as well in top cut or not, you still need to get there. And making that road easier, I think, is important when you're thinking about your list and what goes into it and those pieces that people need to play around. Rudy, do you feel this is kind of lining up with your opinion on OB2 and where he sits?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that OB2. Okay, so I'm going to back up and rely on my TCG background a little bit here to kind of give some context on my opinion here. So, one of the first things you do in TCG games when you're analyzing if something is meta relevant is, does it bend/break the rules of the game in an advantageous way for you? If a card is capable of doing that, then you look at it a little closer and decide if it's worth playing. That's typically one of the check marks you look for. And so when it comes to this game, I tend to analyze units in the same way, and I think OB2 does meet that requirement. So in that context, yes, I think there is an opportunity cost. There is absolutely play pattern differential whenever you're playing against OB2. Do I think he can be played around? Do I think that good players that are capable of thinking on their feet can avoid him and still win a game? Absolutely. I just think that he is a disruptor. I look at him as a disruptive piece that forces my opponent to use a little bit of their mental bandwidth to adjust. And in a 5-round Swiss event, or even in a 4-round Swiss event, that is a lot to ask, especially in later rounds. And so therefore, I personally believe that as the day goes on, pieces like OB2, Callus, Kanan, Cassian, etc., their value in a list increases.
Yeah, fatigue is absolutely a great point to put in there. The more choices you're forcing someone to make, the harder it's going to be later in the day.
Yeah, and you've said too, Titus, is that the trend is that attack expertise is becoming much, much more important. And Matt Bronson, actually, that put out an article recently.
I was just going to mention that.
That was discussing that, right? So we're seeing the game trend this way, to which I think OB2, and even a Callus, like you mentioned as well, too, for rerolls, are going to become much more important as we go along the game's lifespan.
Yeah, the disarm condition is definitely gone up in value from when the game released, especially on supports. Disarm is becoming more and more relevant, and
yes,
OB2 is one of the best ways to put that somewhere.
Yeah, so
where I think this is just a really interesting conversation is, and it's why I brought it up to go into this conversation, is how polarizing OB2 has been in particular. I think you look at a piece like Cassian and everybody knows where Cassian fits in the current meta. Callus is actually another great example where you still see significant debate on whether Callus is a good pick. You get some opinions that he only belongs in Spectre lists. You've got Sam who, anchors Callus around, the rest of the list. I actually think there's some really good, really good comparisons there because, I'm overall lower on Callus, but I also have fear of force constraint, which we've discussed a couple times.
I still think a great example is the old Django Not So Fast, because people would say, oh, that ability is not a problem at all in Top Cut, so it's irrelevant. But it's like, it is, though. It's still relevant because playing around it means you're just not activating a unit near him. Sometimes you can't just not do that.
And I think as somebody that's played the same list that you have, Rudy, my experience with OB2 has been very similar to yours. There are some opponents that can play around him, but most of the time on shifting in the center point or in the middle of sabotage, he is an absolute game winner.
Yeah, I think as with any character, well, I shouldn't say any because there are some that have little to no drawbacks, but that's another discussion. Anyways, yeah, OB2 definitely has his drawbacks. He can have little to no impact if he's at the bottom of your deck and you're playing against a faster list that wants to end the game quickly. I mean, everything in the game has drawbacks. It's just about how do you mitigate it. Do I think that Empire is the best home for OB2? No, actually. I believe that his best home is under Kiadi Mundi, personally, because that list is actually capable of moving him around out of activation.
Yep. And yeah, that seems huge.
Yeah. So do I think it's the best home for him? No. Do I think he has a home in top lists? Yes. If the list is capable of carrying the weight of whenever OB2 does nothing. And I do think Empire have very high statted good units. And so they are capable of carrying that weight and helping out a little bit when OB2 doesn't do a whole lot.
Yeah, and in Duncan's list too, he seems very good to give run onto something that's in melee, right? Like giving a reposition to Rift to move him somewhere, for example, I think is good.
Moving the Magna Guards, they need movement so bad.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, or even the Magna Guards. Yeah, I mean, Rift just came out because he's the hot topic out of the tournament.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the run ability in Duncan's list in particular, again, is showing some diversity within OB2 as well too, that he can fit in multiple spots.
I think there's a near zero chance I would run Dooku in current state without OB2.
Yeah. I think OB2 requires some sort of force refresh and or a significant amount of force in your list.
Yes.
I do think people they think they need more force than he does, because a lot of cases he does have an effect, even like people will choose not to attack within his bubble, but you still want 2 or 3. You want to be able to threaten to use his ability 2 or 3 times. So
Yeah,
I've played him with Mace. And
it's more the threat.
it's just,
for sure.
I've been fine with 1 extra. Like I don't tend to take the force regen on Mace, and he's still been fine.
Yeah, and I've always found with GI's Force Refresh, and Rudy, maybe you can comment on this, when you're playing Raiden GI, that Force Refresh is enough to keep him going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the important thing is understanding your order deck and all the other things that comes with being able to pilot a list competently and effectively. But I will say having enough force to be able to activate it after he has died is also something that is very important, because most people will just target him and kill him as quickly as they can. If you can afford to spend 2 force on a mind trick late in the game to keep somebody from taking a point, that is huge.
Yeah,
amazing. There you go.
So in short, play OB2. He's great. if you haven't given him a shot yet and a serious try, get him on the table. Just it is super. And again, I think a piece that a lot of us took an initial look at post rebalance and said that was a pretty big nerf. But I actually think he's in a healthier spot now than he was.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
The old mind trick was really, really good in a Kiati list, but was prohibitively expensive basically anywhere else.
And I would also just extend that, like, if you are ever in a mindset of like, oh, well, this thing's not good, I can play around it for X and Y reason, take a second to think about like what you're giving up in order to play around that unit. Because even just something that has deflect or riposte, if you are choosing not to attack something in a certain way, that has a value. Even if no one spends any force on it and no one ever takes any damage. Narrowing someone's choices is still powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Sean, you want to give some shout outs for Force Convergence?
What? Our GT that is now 3 tickets away from a complete sellout. Listen, this is huge for our community. We had the table bound open in May to 31 people. That was a fantastic milestone for our community. For us to be 3 away from a full sellout, 32, to get the gold stamp of approval on this GT, I think for all of us in the Ontario community is huge. We're seeing people from either side of Ontario to come out. We have our friends, a couple of our friends from Michigan coming out. People are really, really getting around the last GT in Ontario. And for me, it's amazing. I've already announced some prizing. We have the usual A&G stuff. And I have a couple more surprises coming up. If you are not aware of the GT, please message us in the Discord. The link's in the show notes. I am going to be potentially speaking to AMG2 about increasing prizes. So we might go to 36, we might go to 40. I just have to wait and hear back from AMG. But right now we are on the last 3. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking about coming to Force Convergence, you need to buy your tickets now.
It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. October 4th and 5th, Burlington, Ontario, Torchlight Games and Hobbies. It's going to be a great time.
I'm always looking for a reason to come to Canada.
Dude, we need you all
out.
Come make a trip,
man.
Yeah. It's fairly close to the border too, so like it's not bad.
Yeah. That's my spiel. We're super happy to finish off the last GT in Ontario on such a high note.
Awesome. And Titus, you're going to be starting up the next season of our local league.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up with our last game. There's a couple guys there that haven't finished their last round.
Stragglers. Yeah, one's
But,
on the cast tonight.
in all seriousness, it's been a great time. But we're gonna, as soon as we get that game in, we'll crown our champion and then start up the next season in a couple weeks. So, give people some time to sign up, but hopefully we'll get it started before the October GT. I'd like to get at least a round in before then.
Sweet.
But we'll see how it goes. If we
Awesome.
find out there's interest, I can delay.
Awesome. Well, as always, join us on our Discord to join the conversation. The link is in the show notes. It's been bumping lately. Hey, if you're going to an event soon and you need a cheer team, we were all on Team Rudy.
We were on Team Rudy.
They were, and it was definitely very helpful throughout the day just to see all the encouragement.
But if you want to jump in, join the conversation, tell us why we're all wrong about OB2. I'm on board. Let's have that conversation. Thank you, Rudy, for joining. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the cast, and congrats again on a great run.
Thank you.
You did
Thank
great,
you.
man.
Thank you. It's been fun. I've had a great time being here. Thank you for having me.
Sweet.
Beautiful. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.